I woke up this morning feeling so shitty about my skin. You know, as someone who had cystic acne as a teenager, it just throws me right back into those years where I was at my most insecure, even though I'm now in my 30s. And I know that my worth is not determined by how my skin looks, but you know, I can't help but feel a little bit insecure about it. And then you get the inevitable suggestions from people online like, have you tried drinking spearmint tea? What about cutting out dairy? You probably have a gluten intolerance. You should eat more vegetables. Like, yes, I've tried all those things. Thank you. So I'm gonna start by putting my hair back. And right now my doctors think that I have something called SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So I'm on the low FODMAP diet, but I'm waiting to get a test so that they can put me on a specific kind of antibiotics. But in the meantime, I'm left with this. Let's zoom in so you can get a better look. This is what's happening. I've got breakouts all around my neck. They're all over my chest, on my chin, around my mouth, around my nose, and on my forehead. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of the Milk Hydro Grip primer. I already have a sunscreen on. I'm wearing the Paula's Choice Super Light Daily Wrinkle Defense. I love that because it sets down to a soft matte finish. When I have acne, I don't want my sunscreen to be really greasy or heavy or really dewy. I just want something that's gonna set down to basically a skin-like finish. But that sunscreen does have a little bit of a slip to it. So I'm just going in with a primer on the areas where I have acne and where I get a little bit oily in my T-zone. If I just went straight in with a concealer or a foundation, it can really like slide right off the blemishes. And it's especially difficult if you have any acne spots that are more flat. Like these right here have already healed or in the stages of healing, so they're more flat. And if you have an area that has flat skin, it's a lot harder for concealer to grip to it versus this spot that's really raised. So I'm gonna tap some primer there so I can really make sure that the concealer holds onto it well. And I'm not gonna be using any foundation today, and that's my trick. I really much prefer to keep my skin looking totally like skin and not like I'm wearing a lot of foundation or makeup. That is a trick that I learned by one of the makeup artists on SNL. His name's Andrew Sotomayor. Back when I did a little bit of modeling in my college years in New York, I met Andrew and we worked together on a bunch of shoots. And he told me that despite my acne, I had really good skin. And he told me that I should focus more on how beautiful my skin was besides those spots. And that was something that really stuck with me. This primer is so good if you have acne because you can see now my skin has a little bit of tackiness to it. So the makeup is gonna grip right on. My favorite product to use when I'm breaking out is the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Concealer. This is in the shade Light 40N, and I use this instead of foundation. So I'm gonna skip this outer area where my skin looks really good, and I'm gonna focus right there, and then around my nose, definitely right here. And I'm gonna go in with spot concealer, so this is just to even out my tone. Right there, little right here, got some redness here, a little bit on my cheeks, and then down my neck a little. That's my foundation. So I'm just gonna take the Fit Glow foundation brush and just kind of like tap that on. I don't wanna use a lot of buffing motions because that can kind of disturb the way it looks and kind of break it up a little bit. I just wanna tap so that the product stays in place. I don't wanna buff it out and blend it out. And already you can see just how much more even that looks because this concealer is, they say it's full coverage. I think it's more medium coverage, but what's great about it is it has a skin-like natural finish. It's not dewy, it's not matte. If you have a product that's really matte, your skin can look dry, especially if you're the kind of person who really treats your acne spots with, you know, salicylic acid, benzoyl peroxide. Skin can get a little bit flaky, and so in my skincare prep, I added a lot of moisturizer and I focused that moisturizer and a hydrating serum underneath on those areas where I had a lot of breakouts because I don't want anything to look really flaky. I don't want anything to look dry or textured. I just want everything to be kind of soft. And so since this concealer has a really beautiful natural finish, it just looks like skin. It doesn't look like you're wearing a ton of makeup. And already this is making such a huge difference. And this also works on days where I have really, really bad breakouts. Like this is not even nearly as bad as my skin gets. And now I'm just gonna blend on my neck a little bit. My neck is a lot lighter than my face, unfortunately. So the concealer does look a little bit darker on my neck, but I have a separate spot concealer for my neck and a separate one for my face so that I get the perfect match. So first, I'm just gonna go in with my neck concealer, which is the Beauty Pie Everyday Great Skin Concealer in Ivory. And I'm gonna conceal this spot right here. And I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute. And on my neck right here and here. If you have a concealer like this one that is super, super blendable, flexible, kind of stretchable, just let it sit for a minute so that it starts to set and then it can grip to those spots a little bit better. I'm just using this because it's the lightest shade that I have, but the best spot concealer money can buy is the Makeup Forever Full Cover Concealer. This bad boy I've been using for like at least 10 years. It's so good, but this is in a slightly darker shade than my neck, so this is my good face match. And the great thing about this is it's waterproof, so once it's on your skin, like it is on your skin. And I just squeeze a little bit on the back of my hand and then just take any kind of pointy brush to have on hand and dot the concealer in place. And I like to focus on one area at a time. So let's do this area right here. It does take a long time to cover acne because I want to be really precise with it and I want the rest of my face to look like skin, but it's worth it. It's worth it to feel confident, worth it to take the time to feel like your skin still looks like skin versus taking something like a full coverage foundation, you know, then you just look like you caked it on. That's what I used to do in college. So now you can see all these little spots here. And while I'm blending my neck concealer, I'm gonna let that sit. On these, I'm gonna take a little bit of a fluffier brush, but you can use your finger, you can use anything that you have, and I'm just tapping it and then tapping a little bit of the excess around the blemish so it kind of blends in. This one's a bitch. This has been here for like a month. And just going around the blemish. And then I'm gonna take that same end and lightly tap. And there's nothing you can really do about how raised they are or the texture, but at least you can cover the redness. And now I'm just gonna repeat the same process pretty much all over my entire face, anywhere where I have redness. Now I'm gonna get my chin here, and then just keep tapping it out. Moving on to my cheek, I'm just gonna add concealer and let it set for about a minute. And now it's setting a little bit better. All the spot concealing is done. And now I'm gonna go in with pressed powder and I'm gonna take the fluffier end of this dual brush and I'm just gonna powder all of the different spots because I don't want my entire face to be powdered. I don't want to take a big brush and then have my entire face look super flat. Since I already do have a soft matte sunscreen, my skin's not super luminous right now. So I'm just gonna go in with powder on the areas where I really truly need it. Like right along here, down here, all of these. And then I'm gonna do one big swoop with a bigger brush and just blend those areas because you can see a little bit of difference between where this is matte and the rest of my skin. So I'm just gonna tap around that area like really lightly. And there's no powder left on this brush, so I'm just blending the excess out just so that everything looks really seamless. And then just a dot here just so that everything is a little bit more blended. Now I'm gonna go with my under eye concealer, which is the Fit Glow Concealer in C2.5. And I'm just adding a little bit because again, I don't wanna look like I'm wearing a ton of makeup. And I think I learned most of these tips from Lisa Eldridge over the years. She's just such a goddess. She's pretty famous, but if for some reason you don't know her, definitely check her out. She's a professional makeup artist. She has a whole line of makeup as well. She's just such a wealth of information. Concealer's done. Now I'm gonna go in with bronzer. I personally like using powder for this because if I kind of buff on a cream, it can really disturb the concealer underneath. But with a powder, you can really just kind of tap the powder on, and I find it a lot more easy to blend and a lot less likely to disturb the concealer that's already underneath. So I'm just gonna take a dot and then kind of under my cheekbones at the top here. And now I'm just gonna do a tiny bit under my jawline and chin. I really don't want to use a ton of bronzer. I skipped my nose, I skipped my chin here. I really just do it a little bit on my jawline, on my forehead and my cheekbones because I don't want to be like blending bronzer all the way down my neck, making it look super obvious that it's makeup. Just quickly while I do my brows, I think the funny thing in watching professional makeup artists on YouTube versus beauty gurus is makeup artists use such little product. They have such a light hand and they just build in really like thin layers. And that's something that's so hard to remember when you're just doing your makeup on your own because we're all in a rush. We got places to go. So we just like to slap things on. And sometimes it can just be really fun to like haphazardly add makeup to your face and add a bunch of blush. But I do find that when I'm actually following makeup artist techniques, my skin looks so much more like skin and my makeup looks a lot better. Oh my God, I have a pimple on my eyebrow that is so painful. Oh, that is painful. Okay, brows are done. Now for blush. I'm just taking a little bit of powder blush. This is the Bare Minerals Bronzer and Kiss of Pink, tapping off the excess. And instead of like blending it on, that would disturb this concealer here. I'm just gonna kind of lightly tap it, starting at the temple and kind of bring it in. Most of the product here and then bringing it in. And again, starting at the temple and then just kind of bringing it in. Starting at the temple and then just kind of bringing it in. And I also like to add just a little dusting here so it looks like a natural flush or like naturally sun-kissed. A little bit on my chin. And sometimes I'll do a little bit on my forehead as well, just so it looks like it's actually coming from within my skin. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of this Refer 23 brush. I'm gonna conceal these tiny little areas right here that have kind of peeked out a little bit. I'm just taking like the tiniest little dot of concealer on the tiniest brush ever. Add like a tiny little boop. Like you can barely see that. And then just tapping that lightly in. Anywhere where I want it. In terms of highlighter, I don't want anything that's super shiny or like really blinding because that can emphasize a lot of texture. So for this, I like to reach for the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter because it works perfectly on top of powder and it adds a little bit of a blurring quality to your skin. So it doesn't look like a highlighter. It just looks like you have really beautiful kind of expensively cared for skin. That's the skin done, so I'm just gonna finish off the rest of my makeup and be right back. Okay, just finished it off with a really natural eye, a natural brown lip, and then to top it off, I'm gonna use the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Setting Spray, just so that the powders kind of all blend together. That's it, that's the full face. I know it takes so much time and effort to just do all of that tiny little pinpoint spot concealing, but I just feel like my acne isn't the first thing that you see anymore. Sure, you know, you can still see the texture in areas where you just can't prevent that from showing, but I honestly don't care. Like I just feel so much better. I feel so much more confident. I really like the way that my skin turned out. I'm not a professional, but I have learned from a lot of them. So I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, please click the like button. It really helps our channels to grow. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.